Hi guys, it's Veer from Chromie Homies and I wanted to continue with my tank guide series for ChromieCraft. Today I am going to talk about bear druids, how they perform in the tank food chain and in raids, talents, builds and tips. Let's start with talents as always. So if you quickly look at the first row, we have ferocity and feral aggression. This is just attack power reduction for us because ferocious bite is useless. So the demo shout is 40% increase. That's about 60 attack power decrease. It's not worth it. You would rather take reduced rage from maul and swipe and get more damage and threat this way. In the second row, we go for Savage Fury and Thick Hide. The 2 points that I have in Feral Instinct are where I dump the remaining talent points, so this is optional. But Savage Fury and Thick Hide are mandatory for raids. This increases 10% armor and this gives 20% better damage on your maul. Survival Instinct is the biggest cooldown that you have, like the last stand form warriors, and it is very important because druids like big fat cooldowns in general. This is a must have. 6% crit from this talent is also super good because critical strike synergizes really well with druids. This is 30% movement speed in cat form and 4% dodge overall in bear form. Super useful because the movement speed is appreciated when you are traveling, closing gap, and 4% dodge synergizes really well with druids. Not just mitigation, but something else which we'll see in a couple more talents. Predatory strikes is huge attack power increase and is a must have, so that is very straightforward. The combo point portion is not relevant for bears, but the attack power is more than worth it. Primal Fury gives you 5 rage every time you crit, and since we have a lot of crit, because we are an agility class and we have a lot of critical strike from talents, this is very much worth it. Primal Precision is super good because for only 2 points you get 10 expertise, which is 2.5% less chance to dodge and parry, which is huge for tanks, not just for threat, but also for their output. Shredding attacks is useless for bears at the moment because we don't have lacerate and shred is not something that you can use in bear form, it's cat only. This is a PvP option because stun duration of bash is irrelevant almost in PvE because bosses can't be stunned. It still serves as an interrupt, so reduced cooldown is not that bad, but 2 points is not worth it for PvE. Feral Charge is the main gap closer and one of the best abilities for druids. It also interrupts, but mostly a gap closer. Uh, Super important must have for bears. Take it. Nurturing Instinct is mostly self healing from agility, but the cat portion of the talent is not useful for bears, and getting about 100 spell power for yourself isn't worth it. You rarely ever get to cast them outside of doing before pull, and this is just a waste of 2 talents. Now we get to the strongest talent in all of World of Warcraft from all uh, tanks specializations. This is the best talent that you can ever take. Okay, I hyped it up really much because it is that strong. It increases all attributes by 6% and reduces the chance you'll be critically hit by 6% from melee attacks. This makes defense a worthless stat for druids because you don't get parry or dodge because you're a druid, you can't parry or block, so you only get dodge from defense and you already have the critical reduction from your talent, so defense only gives you dodge, and it becomes a very shit stat for druids because of this reason. And on top of both these incredible increases, you get 33% more armor. Like, this is just insane. I don't know what they were thinking when they created this talent, but this is the strongest talent that you can take by far. Take it. Out of the Wild, very straightforward, 10% stamina for 5 points, worth it, take it. Natural Reaction, this is one of the main ways you get rage. It's by dodging. When you pull AoE and have multiple targets on you, this is going to be the main rage generator. It also increases dodge by 6%, so you already have 10% dodge from talents, which is huge. And you get rage from it. Take it, very strong. Leader of the Pack is a must have because you will more often than not be the only feral druid in the raid, and This is going to be a huge increase for your raid members. 5% crit, take it. Improved leader of the pack is a nice talent to have. It's not mandatory, but it's super useful. It gives you 8% mana and 4% maximum health, and procs on every crit every 6 seconds. Protector of the pack reduces overall damage taken by 12%. Another mitigation for bears, huge, because this is not just physical, it's also magical damage. It also makes bears one of the best, not one of the best, it's the best passive mitigation class in the game, which makes up for the lack of active mitigation. Obviously, we have bark skin, but it's only 20%. It's a fast cooldown, 1 minute, but it's uh, only 20%. Like warriors and paladins have a big fat cooldown with 50% and 60% damage reduction overall, but druids have better passive damage reduction and a shorter cooldown bark skin. So it's kind of a trade-off between short time, big cooldown, big mitigation, and passive mitigation plus short cooldown, small mitigation. Anyways, Protector of the Pack, super strong, take it. Predatory Instincts is just cat talent, skip it, useless for bears. Infected Wounds is a must-have in my opinion because it's 20% attack speed reduction. That's simple. Even if you don't get the benefit of the movement speed in PvE, the attack speed makes it more than worth it. It procs from your maul and shred, a must-have. Mangle is a really strong ability. Even though we don't have bleed in the form of lacerate at this level, it's still a good rage dump when we have excess, and in general a good filler to use. But the main thing is that it procs infected wounds, and when you berserk, it hits 3 targets. So I will explain this synergy soon, but Mangle is a must-have, and it deals good damage. So this talent is where I choose to put my remaining 5 points in for the King of the Jungle and the Feral Instincts, and I will quickly explain why. Because Rant and Tear, even though it's a really strong talent traditionally, you don't get the value out of it because you don't have Lacerate at the moment, so you're not bleeding the target, so you're not dealing increased maul damage. So this is mostly a waste for Bear Druids, and this is a cat talent at the moment pretty much. And also Primal Gore is not useful because we don't have Lacerate, which makes it really awkward to put points into random tier. So I suggest you skip this entirely. Just go for King of the Jungle. This gives you 15% increased damage in Dire Bear form, which is huge, and most people overestimate the armor reduction from Enrage. It's not that significant. Like you reduce maybe 800 armor with Enrage, but for 10 seconds you get 15% more damage, and also passively reduces the mana cost of your shapeshift, which is also sometimes important. But the main reason you take this talent is the 15% damage increase from Enrage. Now we have 2 points left over, and this is the only 2 points, in my opinion, that are optional that you could put in this tree. And I choose to put them in Feral Instinct because this gives the best PvE increase, even though Swipe is not going to be useful in single target boss tanking or whatever, but it's still useful to have in AoE situations. It's the strongest. So swipe 20% is, in my opinion, better than anything else that you could take with these 2 points. But like I said, you wouldn't be losing out that much if you choose not to go for the swipe. So overall, these are the 50 points that you spend, and then finally we get Berserk. There are some players who choose not to have Berserk, but in my opinion, it's so good that you should never skip this. The main reason I say this is so good is because it makes Mangle spammable and hitting 3 targets. So when you see no cooldown and hits up to 3 targets, this is super important when you pull a lot of mobs because you get to mangle all of them. Not only get a lot of threat and a lot of damage, but also get infected wounds on all of them, reducing their attack speed by 20%. So let's say you pulled a lot of mobs, you can just tab and mangle and keep mangling, and you would reduce all of their attack speed, which is essentially a mitigation since you are decreasing the attack speed. And Obviously, the fear immune part is super useful in some encounters as well. I think it's not worth skipping Berserk because there isn't anything else to take. An argument can be made for going for improved Mark of the Wild, but 1% overall total stats, just very lackluster. You could go for Führer if you were a cat, but again, not worth it. Just go for Berserk. It's super good. Take it. And finally, glyphs for this section would be Glyph of Maul and Glyph of Challenging Roar. These two are mandatory because they are bear empowering talents, so you should take them. Maul hitting 2 target is huge, and Challenging Roar 30 seconds shaving is huge. But there aren't any other mandatory options for your remaining glyphs, which is why I opt to take the Glyph of Rebirth, which is the best option. Gives your Rebirth the ability to get people alive with full health. And this one is the most, the one that where you have the most choice because obviously Regent is not something that you need to have. It's just for convenience. You could also get like dash cooldown decrease here, but I don't use dash that often in PvE. It's just a gap closer and walking between bosses. So I feel like getting extra convenience from Rebirth Regent is more than worth it. But this is it. This is the talent section of the guide, and in my opinion, it's very straightforward. Apart from the 3 points in King of Jungle and 2 points in Feral Instinct, most people will have something similar. But yeah, I think the choices are going for this, and Berserk. This is what I've seen so far in the server between all the different bear builds. Now we can talk about gear, and I prepared 3 sets for you, and we can talk about itemization in general and what are the priorities for a bear tank. So the most important stat, as always, for any tank in this game is hit rating because it will give you the best threat generation by far. Missing your abilities is the biggest threat loss. So get hit capped, and by hit capped, I mean at the bare minimum get melee hit cap, but ideally we will chase spell hit cap for our verifier and growl because if you noticed, we don't have the taunt glyph, which is usually what makes our taunt easy to get capped with. And in traditional rat servers, you wouldn't be going for spell hit cap because of this reason. But right now we don't have it, and we want our taunts to be as consistent as possible. So in a raid environment, we are going to chase spell hit cap. And we get 3% from Boomy for Shadow Priest and 1% from Denai, which means the goal is to get 13%. So keep that in mind. If you don't reach it, it's fine, but we are going to chase and get as close as possible. Obviously, we are not going to sacrifice every other stat in the process and still maintain a good overall stat. But yes, hit rating is the most important. After that would be the important stats are stamina and expertise maybe, but the problem with expertise is it's super good always for tanks because you attack from front and you get reduced dodge and parry, super good, but it doesn't work on your spells verifier and growl. So like while it's super good, it's not where you get the biggest threat increase. The biggest threat increase you get from hit rating. So if you like open the threat meter and check how much threat you get from like a mangle or a mole, and you compare this to a single verifier, you will see the threat difference. You see 2.4k threat from a single verifier. So threat wise, verifier is the best by far, and having this hit more consistently is going to give you the biggest threat per second. Obviously, hitting your mole and mangle and everything is also super important, but not as important as verifier. Therefore, it is the best stat. Get as much of it as you can until hit cap for your single target raid environments. Now this set that I have is the defensive version I call, and I use it in dungeons because of huge AoE pulls. And this trinket is the king of AoE pulls because it heals you for a lot. It procs from swipe and it gives you like 300 HPS. Most of it becomes over healing even, so you barely lose any HP in dungeons. Use it in AoE situations and dungeons. This ring I only use in dungeons. Like we said, defense isn't that good for druids. It's only dodge, but the stamina is good and the armor is good, so I use it in dungeons and the tanky version of the set while maintaining a 7% hit, which is the melee cap. But I change two items in raids and take Seal of Ascension, which I will replace it with Alterac Body Ring soon, and mostly just taking hit, crit, and stamina from this, and the hit trinket Mark of the Resolution, which brings me to spell hit wise 12.4%. But when I change the necklace with Onyxia, I'm gonna get really close to the spell hit cap, which is acceptable. Obviously, I would like to have 13%, but don't have it yet. I will have it soon. But get as much as you can, preferably 13% in raid environments. If I quickly go over all of the items, the bread and butter of tank builds are these two trinkets right now. I have Myrmidon's Signet. I could change this for a hit ring as well. When I get the Alterac Volley ring, I could use this, but it brings me way over hit cap, so I don't get the full value from hit, and the stats on this ring are really good, so it's kind of debatable. Seal of Ascension is the main good hit choice at the moment as ring. Dawn Treaders, crafted item, easy to get, you should get it. Gives a lot of stamina and hit, very good. You farm this from Sunken Temple, it's worth it because it's going to be best in slot for quite some time. And in general, a good thing about Druid itemization is that most items are from pre-raid. Like you only the only items I have from raid are the gloves and my weapon, but you can also use the crafted weapon, and you would only use this from Molten Core. For now, obviously there are some upgrades to get from Molten Core, but they are not essential. For Druid, most of the best items that you can have right now are from dungeons, and this is a huge benefit because you can just go out and grind them as opposed to getting lucky in a weekly situation. So we have the Mugger's Belt, expertise, crit, stamina, very straightforward. Expertise, like we said, is a good stat. It is not as good as hit, but it's still super good. Missing less means more threat, so it's always welcome. Not missing, I mean, get dodging and parrying less is more threat, so take it. H core hound leather gloves, like H core leather gloves, really strong. The stats benefit the druids quite a lot. Strength, obviously, stamina, resistances, expertise, and crit. Overall, a very solid bear tank item. Use it. The only choice for idle really, brutality, maul, and swipe damage. Take it. Bracers, black mist from the beast in UBRS. Hit, stamina, agility, very strong. Use it. Shoulders, demonic rune spoilers I use. This is from lower blackjack spire, very strong for now. Just stamina, agility, and hit. The helm is from Schola and the best option right now and for some time. Take it. It's hit, crit, attack power, stamina, very very strong item. Uh, my weakest uh, my weakest choice for necklace is Ember Fury Talisman, but I don't have anything better and I didn't bother because we will get Onyxia's necklace in a couple of days, and that is going to be best in slot for quite some time. So I'm just waiting to replace this with Onyxia necklace. The cloak, I have shifting cloak crafted, very strong, and I will be replacing this with Ragnar's cloak when it drops for me. And lastly, breastplate of Bloodthirst. This is from UBRS, the Beast. You skin it, you get skin, you do the quest, you get this chest. Is it important? It's good for damage output. Defensively, it's not the best option. The best defensive option would be from UBRS, Last Boss, and Shadowcraft Tunic because it gives you hit rating and a lot of agility. Less stamina, but the hit rating on it allows you to use better items, and the agility will give you more dodge than 1% and more overall stats than this chest. But offensively, this is the best because 2% crit and strength will give you more output than 26 agility. So since I don't really need the hit rating, and I don't have the chest that I just showed you. I'm using this one. This is the best option offensively. And finally, weapon. I have been lucky to get server first Sulfuras Hand of Ragnaros crafted for myself. This is obviously the best choice for bear tanks. A lot of people who are coming from Classic might look at this item and be surprised because this is not traditionally a barrel tank item in Classic. But a couple of changes in RUT makes this by far the best option for bear tanks and also the best option for your raid to give it to bear tanks because of a couple of reasons. One is that your two-handed DPS will be able to get Nefarian Sword in BWL really soon, and this is a very comparable item at a DPS, slower, a bit faster weapon, but in general, Sword also increase expertise for humans. Mace does, but the main thing is Sword spec is better than Mace spec for PvE, and this weapon is very comparable to Sulfuras, so you place it in one tiers makes it less important for the DPS to have. Also, Druids can't use swords, so Nefarian items are the strongest from BWL, and you can't use the strongest weapon, so you will not be replacing Sulfuras for the entire classic basically. And 358 attack power is a lot better than the next best option, which will be the Lava Dredger from Molten Core. Defensively, this is the best option after Ragnaros, and it's basically double the attack power that you get from it. And the third best option defensively would be Black Fury, but offensively this is better than Lava Dredger, which is why I would recommend that you use this over Lava Dredger. You don't really need to stack that much defense for Molten Core anymore. It's mostly a walkthrough. It's just the better threat, the better damage that you have, you can speedrun it more comfortably. If I didn't get Ragnaros Hammer, I would be still using Black Fury. But you can see the attack power difference is huge. But one of the main reasons why this is so good for bears in Rat is because chance on hit uh, procs from form attacks, while in Classic it only popped proc from melee weapon swings. But in Rat you can pop the effect, the fireball effect from your form hits, and most importantly swipe. So since swiping will hurl a fireball or have a chance to throw a fireball on all targets, and since you have a very high crit rate, and since the fireball can crit, it is quite good for bear tanks in that regard as well. The fire damage, the small thorns will give you a decent threat boost in AO situation. So you get threat, you get a lot of procs from your swipes, you get 200 more attack power than your next best weapon, and you will be using this until the end of AQ40 probably. Like, not probably, you will be using this until AQ40 100%. And last thing to note is that it is impossible to get fire resistance capped while being hit capped or druids without this hammer. So if you want to be fire resistance capped as a druid and you also want to keep your hit cap, this is the only way that you get it as a bear druid, as your options are very limited. And in general, everything on this item practically screams that it is super good for bear druids. So the thorns is really good for tanks. The proc from swipes is really good. The attack power is insane. 30 fire resistance is really good. The defensive stats are okay, stamina and strength, but they are still very beneficial for tanks, so this makes it the best choice for your tanks. Obviously, you could give it to Red Paladin, which would increase their DPS by like maybe 100, 130 overall. But you also get a raid DPS increase from your Druid. You get about 35, 40 DPS increase, but most importantly, you get a lot of defensive stats, a lot of threats, and a lot of fireball damage in AoE situations. For example, for Paladins, this wouldn't proc from Consecration, and it would only proc from Divine Storm. So swiping will grant a lot more proc per minute in AoE situations than any other class for the Hand of Ragnaros. Anyways, we talked a lot about this item. Let's keep talking about gearing, and the last portion of the gearing will be fire resistance gear. And in the fire resistance set, you should be going for melee hit cap because chasing spell hit will seriously disable your options and you will be ending up with low fire resistance. So just chase melee cap and then go for as much fire resistance as you can. And right now I'm using the crafted helm, the crafted belt, the crafted boots, and I changed my gloves with Shadowcraft gloves to make the required hit rating, and using the ring seal of ascension. The trinkets are always the same, the weapon is the same. Using the BRD bracers, the same chest, because I don't have the UBRS Druid chest, sorry, the rock chest, a fireproof cloak, and the alternative would be to use the Salamander cloak and Drink Fire amulet with the hit shoulders to still make the hit cap. One small optimization that I can make for this build when it drops is from Majordomo I can get the Fire Guard shoulders and replace this, and I will be missing 1% hit, which I will make up for it from the necklace from Onyxia, and this will be a huge fire resistance upgrade. The reason I have low fire resistance is because of my leggings. I didn't farm the second pair of Atalaya leggings yet, but when I farm it, I'm gonna put 20 fire resistance on the second pair, and this will get me fire resistance capped when I get the fire guard shoulders, which is the only way to get fire resistance capped without sacrificing hit cap. So this pretty much concludes the gearing, and maybe you should put some honorable mentions for gearing, but if you have any questions about missing an item and looking for a replacement, you can also just ask about it in the comments. Most of the items that I use in the raid setup are easily farmable in dungeons, and the only thing that's maybe expensive is this chest, which is completely not mandatory. You can get the UBRS Drakisara rock chest, which is better, and everything else is just easy to get, except the weapon. You can use Black Fury instead of it anyways. So this is it for the gearing portion of the guide. Lastly, I'm going to mention some tips and tricks for druids, and maybe also mention the professions. As professions, you want mining and alchemy for best in slot, because mining gives you passive stamina, and you get toughness, which is 10 stamina for your class, but for druids you obviously get more value from stamina, so this roughly ends up about 160 HP. Uh, and from alchemy you get mixology, which makes your like flask 30% more effective. So from flask of titans, instead of 400 you get 520, and instead of 1 hour it becomes 2 hours. So it makes alchemy and mining the best options for a druid bear tank. You get more HP and more stamina. Essentially you become tankier. And now, lastly, I'm gonna talk about tips, macros, and tricks for bear druids. Obviously, the same consumables from my warrior guide applies here. You can use reaction potions, flask of the titans, stamina fruits, stone shield potions on pulls, and things like that. All of this applies to bear druids as well. They are universal for all tanks. But now some tips and tricks for bears. You should have a macro on all of your forms that slash cast and exclamation mark your form. This will make it so that when you use the form ability again, this will not make you go out of form. It will just completely refresh your form anew. Why is this so important? Because when you get rooted, or when you get something that you need to shapeshift out of, it is important that you do it without dropping your form. So for example, let's use the normal version of dire bear form. Okay, and let's put it here. Okay, when I click it, it will get me out of form, and when I click it again it will put me in form, and when I click it it will be out of form again. So when I'm in bear form, if I want to refresh my bear form to get rid of a root, it is going to get me out instead, and this is what you don't want. To avoid this, use the macro that I showed for every form, and you can just reform without dropping form and get rid of all of the roots and things like that, slows, days, whatever. Just reform and get rid of it. The side effect of doing this is you lose your rage, so use it wisely. Don't use it when you're being rage starved. So keep your mind on that, and make sure you don't lose your rage when you actually need it. But if you're getting way too much rage anyways, use the reform and you will be fine. Another tip that I can give is to have a cancel aura macro for all of your forms and some divine interventions. You can put other things here. You should have this macro to cancel your forms and prowl and divine intervention. So basically, you don't have to wait for the global cooldown to get out of form. For example, if you're going to get hibernated, you can just drop the form instead of having to wait for a global cooldown. So again, for example, let's say I put the normal dire bear form here, okay, and I spam click it. You see, I have to wait for the global cooldown to go into a form, and if I double click it, I will just leave form. So it is always good practice to have the safety of the form, that no matter how many times you spam the button, it will always be shape shifting back into the form. And then for your button, you can just have a button to cancel the form whenever you want, just a keybind that you can use. This basically makes sure that you have total control over your character, and it is good practice to have. Another good macro to have is to have your taunt with a macro to remove hand of protection, which is super important because when you are in bear form, let's say you want, like, sometimes you have a lot of bleeds. Let's say you pulled the entire core hounds before Magmadar, pulled everything at once. You have maybe 50 bleeds on you, even more. You are taking 2k, 3k, 5k damage per second. You get bopped, okay, in the pool. You can just quickly cancel the growl, cancel the hand of protection with your taunt, and having this binded in an easy button to immediately cancel hand of protection is very important for tanks, like all classes, but the most important for tanks. Macro it to your taunt, in my opinion, just quickly cancel it whenever you need to. What else? The same thing applies to prowl. If you don't want to break your prowl when you spam the button, just put an exclamation and you will have total control over it. And these would probably be the most important bare macros that you can use. Other than that, I don't see anything that is going to affect your gameplay that much. Um, and that would be it, basically, for the Druid guide that I have for you guys. Onyxia is going to be released soon, so we are going to get some good upgrades from it. And I wish you all luck in your endeavors in the upcoming raids. And thank you all for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. See you next time.